My mom forgot to set a plate for my son at the family dinner and said, "Only real family eats here." My sister's kids even got seconds. I buttoned my son's jacket, smiled, and left without a word. By morning, 27 missed calls. I texted back calmly, "You said he wasn't family." But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. The drive to Hollis Creek always felt longer than it was. Calla Rains gripped the steering wheel and watched the Indiana farmland blur past, flat and endless under an October sky that couldn't decide between gray and blue. The highway stretched ahead, empty except for the occasional semi-hauling grain or livestock. She'd made this drive 1,000 times, first as a teenager desperate to escape, then as an adult who'd learned that some obligations don't care whether you want them or not. In the back seat, Noah sat with his hands folded in his lap, staring out the window at the passing cornfields. He was 9 years old, small for his age, with dark hair that never quite laid flat no matter how much she smoothed it down. He wore his good jacket, the navy one she'd bought him for school pictures, and his sneakers were tied in careful double knots. "Almost there, buddy," Calla said, catching his eyes in the rearview mirror. Noah nodded. He always nodded, never complained, never asked how much longer, never whined about being hungry or bored. He'd learned early that being quiet made things easier. Calla hated that he'd learned that. The GPS announced their exit in its flat, mechanical voice. Calla signaled and merged onto the two-lane road that would take them into town, past the Dollar General that had been there since she was a kid, past the grain elevator that cast its shadow across Main Street, past the United Methodist Church where she'd been baptized and later stopped attending because her mother only went on Christmas and Easter, and only then to be seen. Hollis Creek, Indiana. Population 3,847. Home of the Wildcats. Birthplace of exactly nothing anyone cared about. The houses started appearing, small ranch homes with chain-link fences and satellite dishes, yards cluttered with lawn ornaments and cars up on blocks. Some lawns were mowed. Others had given up entirely. Calla turned onto Maple Street, and her mother's house came into view. It looked the same as it always did. White vinyl siding that had yellowed over the years, black shutters that hung slightly crooked, a concrete porch with a missing railing post. The wind chimes her mother had hung 15 years ago rattled in the breeze, a sound that had become so constant Calla barely heard it anymore. The front lawn needed mowing and the bushes needed trimming, but those were the kinds of things that never got done because there was always something more important, or more accurately, because no one felt like doing them. Calla pulled into the driveway behind her sister's car, a Toyota with a dented bumper and a "My Kid is an Honor Student" sticker that was 3 years out of date. She turned off the engine and sat for a moment, hands still on the wheel. "Remember what we talked about," she said quietly. In the mirror, Noah met her eyes. "Be polite. Say please and thank you. Don't interrupt. And if anyone says anything that makes you uncomfortable, tell you. That's right." She turned in her seat to look at him directly. "You don't have to handle anything by yourself. That's my job. Okay. Okay, Mom." The words still made her heart squeeze. 3 years he'd been calling her that, and it still felt like a gift every time. Calla unbuckled and got out, opening Noah's door and waiting while he climbed down from his booster seat. He smoothed his jacket and looked up at the house with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not afraid, exactly, but cautious, like someone approaching a dog they weren't sure was friendly. "No running inside," she reminded him gently, taking his hand. "I know," he said. They walked up the cracked concrete path together. The porch steps sagged under Calla's weight. It had needed replacing for 5 years now, but like everything else, it was easier to ignore than fix. The screen door stuck in its frame, and Calla had to yank it twice before it opened. She knocked once and walked in. The smell hit her first, roasted chicken and butter, and something sweet, maybe pie. The house was warm, almost too warm, the way her mother always kept it. The living room was cluttered with the accumulated debris of a life lived without much thought to organization. Mail stacked on the coffee table, shoes scattered by the door, a basket of laundry that might or might not be cleaned sitting on the couch. "In here," her mother's voice called from the kitchen. Calla led Noah through the living room, past the television playing the evening news to an empty room, past the hallway that led to bedrooms she hadn't slept in since she was 18. The kitchen table was set for dinner. It was a small table, meant for 4 people, but somehow always managing to accommodate 6 or 7 when the family gathered. Today it was covered with food, a whole roasted chicken sitting on a platter, a bowl of mashed potatoes with butter melting in a crater at the center, green beans glistening with more butter, a basket of rolls, a pitcher of sweet tea beating with condensation. Vera Raines stood at the counter, transferring a casserole from the oven to a trivet. She was 62, heavy-set. With gray hair she colored an unconvincing auburn and kept in tight curls. She wore elastic-waist jeans and a sweater with a seasonal pattern, pumpkins and leaves in orange and brown. "About time," Vera said without looking up. "Thought you got lost." "Traffic," Calla lied. Her sister Darla sat at the table with her husband Kyle and their 2 kids, twin girls, 7 years old, already bored and picking at the tablecloth. Darla was 3 years younger than Calla, softer in every way, softer voice, softer features, softer spine. She dyed her hair blonde last month, and it had turned out brassy. Cal barely looked up from his phone. "Hey," Darla said. "You bring anything?" Calla held up the plastic container she'd been carrying. "Brownies." "Oh." Darla's tone suggested disappointment. "Store-bought. From the bakery on 5th. Vera turned around, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes swept over Calla briefly, then settled on Noah standing half-hidden behind his mother's leg. She said. "Nothing more. Just a sound that managed to convey judgment, assessment, and dismissal all at once." Calla felt Noah's hand tighten around hers. "Why don't you sit down?" Vera said, gesturing vaguely toward the table. "Everything's ready." Calla looked at the table. 6 chairs, 7 plates. She counted them slowly, giving herself time to be sure she wasn't mistaken. A plate for Vera at the head of the table, a plate for Darla, 1 for Kyle, 1 for each of the twins, 1 for Calla. 6 plates, 7 people. No plate for Noah. Calla stood very still. She felt something cold settle in her chest, spreading outward like frost on a window. She waited, giving her mother time to notice, giving her a chance to fix it. Maybe it was an oversight. Maybe there was a plate in the kitchen waiting to be brought out. Vera began serving food, spooning mashed potatoes onto plates with practiced efficiency. "Sit, sit," she said, "before it gets cold." Darla's family sat. Calla didn't move. Noah stood beside her, one hand still holding hers, the other tucked into his jacket sleeve. He'd gone very quiet, very still. She could feel the tension in his small body. Vera noticed them standing. She looked at Noah, then at the table, then back at Noah. "Oh," she said flatly. No surprise in her voice. No apology. Just acknowledgement. "I didn't set one for him." The kitchen went quiet. The only sound was the television from the other room and the wind chimes rattling outside. Calla waited for the explanation. The excuse. Something. Vera set down the serving spoon and wiped her hands again, a gesture Calla had seen 1,000 times when her mother was done with a topic. "This is just for family," Vera said. The words hung in the air. Just for family. As if Noah were a neighbor kid who'd wandered in. As if he were something other than what he was. Calla felt her son's hand tremble in hers. She looked at him. His face hadn't changed, still polite, still careful, but his hands had curled into his sleeves and his shoulders had drawn up tight. She knew that posture. She'd seen it at school when other kids were cruel. She'd seen it at the grocery store when strangers stared. She'd seen it too many times, and she'd sworn she would never let him feel that way in a place he was supposed to be safe. She'd sworn. Calla didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She didn't ask her mother what the hell she was thinking or demand an apology or give a speech about family and love and what it meant to be a parent. She simply bent down and buttoned Noah's jacket, one button at a time, working from bottom to top. Her hands were steady. She kissed the top of his head, breathing in the smell of his shampoo and the autumn air still clinging to his hair. "We're leaving," she said quietly. Noah looked up at her with wide eyes. "Mom." "It's okay. Come on." She straightened and turned toward the door, Noah's hand still in hers. Behind her, Vera made a dismissive sound. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. He can eat when we're done." Calla stopped walking, but didn't turn around. "After the family eats," Vera continued, her voice taking on that edge it always got when she was about to justify something indefensible. "There's plenty of food. He's not going to starve." Calla's jaw tightened. She felt the anger rising in her chest, hot and sharp, but she pushed it down. Not here. Not in front of Noah. She wouldn't give her mother the satisfaction of seeing her lose control. She turned around slowly. Vera stood by the table, arms crossed. Chin up, the posture of someone who believed they were right and everyone else was overreacting. Darla and Kyle were staring at their plates. The twins were watching with the fascinated horror of children witnessing adult conflict. "You just told my son he's not family," Calla said. Her voice was calm, dangerously calm. Vera waved her hand, the gesture more irritated than defensive. "I said this dinner is for family. He can have some later. You're making a big deal out of nothing." "Come on, Calla," Darla said quietly. "Mom didn't mean it like that." Calla looked at her sister. "Then how did she mean it?" Darla's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Calla felt Noah pull closer to her side. She put her hand on his shoulder. "We're leaving," she said again. "Fine," Vera snapped. "Go ahead. Throw a tantrum. Ruin dinner for everyone because you can't take a joke." Calla almost laughed. Almost. A joke. That's what her mother was calling it now. She guided Noah toward the door, moving past the table where the food was already getting cold. "You're being ridiculous." Vera called after them. "You're embarrassing yourself." Calla didn't answer. She opened the front door, held the screen for Noah, and followed him out into the evening air. The wind chimes were still rattling. She closed the door behind them, not a slam, just a firm, final click, and walked Noah to the car. He climbed into his seat without being told, and she buckled him in, her hand shaking now that they were out of sight. "Mom." His voice was very small. "Yeah, baby. Did I do something wrong?" Calla's heart cracked. She cupped his face in her hands and looked him straight in the eyes. "No," she said fiercely. "You did nothing wrong. Not one single thing. Do you understand me? Nothing." He nodded, but his eyes were wet. She kissed his forehead and closed the door, then walked around to the driver's side. As she opened her door, she saw the curtain in the front window twitch. Someone was watching. Good, she thought. Let them watch. She started the car and backed out of the driveway without looking at the house again. They drove in silence for 5 minutes before Noah spoke. "Can we get McDonald's?" Calla glanced at him in the mirror. His face was still tight, still holding everything in. "We can get whatever you want," she said. "Can we eat in the car and not talk about what happened?" Her throat tightened. "Yeah, buddy, we can do that." They stopped at the McDonald's on Highway 41, the one with the play place that was always broken. Calla ordered chicken nuggets for Noah and a burger for herself that she knew she wouldn't eat. They sat in the parking lot with the heat running and the radio playing soft rock, and Noah ate his nuggets one at a time while Calla stared at the steering wheel and felt everything she'd been holding back start to surface. Not family. Her mother had looked at her son, her adopted son, the child she'd fought for and waited for and loved more than anything in the world, and called him not family. Calla's phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. She pulled it out and looked at the screen. 3 missed calls from Vera. 2 from Darla. A text from her Aunt Bonnie. What happened? Your mother is very upset. Calla stared at the messages for a long moment, then set the phone face down in the cup holder. Noah was watching her. You okay, Mom? She managed to smile. Yes, sweetheart. I'm okay. It wasn't a lie. Not exactly. She wasn't okay right now, in this moment, sitting in a McDonald's parking lot with the taste of betrayal bitter in her mouth. But she would be. She'd make sure of it. By sunrise, Calla had 27 missed calls. She knew because she'd been awake since 4 in the morning, lying in bed and watching the numbers climb on her phone screen. The calls came in waves. 3 from Vera, then 2 from Darla, then 1 from Aunt Bonnie, then back to Vera again. No one left voicemails. Well, that wasn't quite true. Darla had left one at 5:47 a.m., her voice sharp and accusatory. Seriously, Calla? You're really going to ignore Mom like this? Call me back. Calla deleted it without listening to the whole thing. She got out of bed and padded down the hallway to check on Noah. His room was small but tidy. Bed made with military precision. Books arranged on a shelf by height. Drawings taped to the walls in neat rows. He was still asleep, curled on his side with his hand tucked under his pillow, the dinosaur nightlight casting shadows on the ceiling. She watched him breathe for a moment, making sure he was truly asleep, not just pretending. He did that sometimes when he was worried. Pretended to sleep, so she wouldn't know he was upset. Satisfied, she pulled his door almost closed and walked to the kitchen. Her apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a kitchen that opened into a living room that was really just a space with a couch and a television. The carpet was beige and worn thin in the high-traffic areas. The walls were white and bare except for a few framed photos. Her and Noah at the zoo, Noah's school picture from last year, a landscape she bought at Target because the wall looked too empty without something. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Hers and Noah's. No one else. Calla made coffee and sat at the small kitchen table, her phone in front of her like evidence. The messages had started around 10 o'clock last night and hadn't stopped. She opened her phone and scrolled through them, a sick fascination making her read, even though she knew they'd only make her angrier. Vera, 10:17 p.m. You embarrassed me in front of the whole family. Darla, 10:23 p.m. Mom is crying. Are you happy now? Aunt Bonnie, 10:45 p.m. I don't know what happened, but your mother is very upset. This is not how family treats each other. Vera, 11:02 p.m. All this over plate. You always were too sensitive. Darla, 11:30 p.m. You ruined dinner. Kyle's mad. We drove all the way there for nothing. Vera, 12:14 a.m. I raised you better than this. Calla's hands tightened around her coffee mug. Not one apology. Not one acknowledgement of what had actually happened. Just anger that she'd dared to leave, that she'd made a scene, that she'd put her son's dignity above their comfort. She scrolled further. Aunt Bonnie, 6:02 a.m. Your mother tells me you walked out over something small. She's very hurt. Darla, 6:15 a.m. Call Mom. She didn't mean it the way you took it. Vera, 6:23 a.m. You owe me an apology. Calla laughed once, a short, sharp sound that startled her in the quiet kitchen. She owed her mother an apology. For what? For refusing to let her son be treated like a second-class citizen? For standing up for him when no one else would? For having the audacity to expect basic human decency from the woman who raised her? Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Vera. He should know his place. Calla stared at those 5 words until they blurred. He should know his place. What place was that, exactly? The place of a child who was tolerated but not loved? Who was fed but not welcomed? Who existed at the margins of a family that would never truly accept him? Her hands were shaking. She set down the coffee mug before she could throw it. In the other room, she heard Noah's door open, the soft pad of his feet on the carpet. He appeared in the kitchen doorway. hair sticking up in all directions, wearing the dinosaur pajamas she'd bought him 2 Christmases ago that were getting too small. "Morning," he said quietly. "Morning, baby. You sleep okay?" He nodded and climbed into the chair across from her, his feet swinging above the floor. "Are they mad at us?" he asked. Calla hesitated. She'd never lied to him, and she wasn't going to start now. But she also didn't want to burden him with the ugliness of what her family was saying. "They're upset," she said carefully, "but that's not your fault. You understand that, right?" Noah picked at the edge of the table. "I heard Grandma say I wasn't family." "I know. Is that true?" "No," Calla said firmly. "You are my family. You are my son." What she said was cruel and wrong. He was quiet for a moment, processing. "Do you wish I wasn't here?" he asked in a very small voice. Calla's heart broke all over again. She got up and knelt beside his chair, taking his hands in hers. "Noah, look at me." He did, his dark eyes solemn and searching. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me," she said. "I don't wish you were different or gone, or anything except exactly who you are. Do you understand? You are wanted. You are loved. You are mine." His lower lip trembled. "Even if they don't want me?" "Especially then," she said, "because it means we get to choose our own family. And I choose you. Every single day." He hugged her, his thin arms tight around her neck, and she held him and breathed in the sleepy warm smell of him and promised herself that she would never let anyone make him feel this way again. Never. When he pulled away, his eyes were red but dry. "Can I have cereal?" he asked. "Of course." She poured him a bowl of Cheerios and sat with him while he ate, her phone buzzing and buzzing and buzzing with messages she didn't read. Finally, when Noah had finished eating and gone to brush his teeth, Calla picked up her phone. She opened her messages and typed carefully, choosing her words with precision. "To Vera, you said my son wasn't family." She sent it. Then, one by one, she muted every number. Vera, Darla, Aunt Bonnie, every single person who had called to lecture her, to scold her, to make her feel like she was the problem. Her phone stopped buzzing. The silence was extraordinary. Calla sat in her quiet kitchen, alone with her cold coffee and her choices, and felt something inside her settle. She'd crossed a line she could never uncross. She knew that. Walking out was one thing. Muting them was another. It was a declaration, a boundary, a statement that she would not be moved. Good. Let them be angry. Let them call her ungrateful, oversensitive, dramatic. She'd been called worse. In the bathroom, Noah was humming while he brushed his teeth, some song from a cartoon she didn't recognize. The sound was light and innocent and entirely unaware of the war being fought on his behalf. Calla stood and rinsed her coffee mug, watching the brown liquid swirl down the drain. She had work in an hour, bills to pay, a life to live, and she had a son who deserved better than the scraps her family was willing to offer. So that's what she'd give him. Better. The emails started that afternoon. Calla was at work, sitting in her cubicle at the trucking company where she'd processed payroll for the last 6 years, when her personal email dinged. She glanced at it, expecting spam. It was from Darla. Subject: seriously? You're really going to ignore Mom? After everything she's done for you? You're being childish and selfish. Call her back and apologize. Calla deleted it without responding. 5 minutes later, another email. This one from Aunt Bonnie. Subject: disappointed. I didn't raise you girls to treat your mother this way. Whatever happened, you owe her respect. Family doesn't just walk away. Delete. Then another from Vera herself. Subject: no subject. You've always been difficult. I should have known you'd turn on me the first chance you got. Calla stared at that one longer. Her mother had written 3 paragraphs about how Calla had always been ungrateful, always thought she was better than everyone else, always caused problems. Not one word about Noah, not one acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, telling a 9-year-old he wasn't family might have been hurtful. Calla deleted it too. By the end of the day, she had 11 emails for voicemails. They'd figured out the mute function, didn't stop those, and a text from a cousin she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. She ignored them all. When she picked Noah up from after-school care, he was quiet in the car. "How was school?" she asked. "Fine. Just fine. We had a math test." "How'd you do?" "Okay, I think." They drove in silence for a few minutes. Calla could feel him building up to something, gathering courage. "Mom." "Yeah." "Are we in trouble?" She glanced at him in the mirror. "What do you mean?" "With Grandma and Aunt Darla. Are we in trouble?" Calla took a breath. "They're upset with me. Not with you. Because we left. Because I won't let anyone treat you badly. Even them." Noah was quiet, thinking, "Is that why they're calling so much?" So he'd noticed. Of course he had. The kid noticed everything. "Yes," she said honestly. "What do they want?" "They want me to say I'm sorry." "Are you going to?" Calla met his eyes in the mirror. "No." "Why not?" "Because I'm not sorry. I did the right thing." Noah nodded slowly, processing this information the way he processed everything. Carefully, thoughtfully looking for the rules and patterns that would tell him how to behave. "Mom." "Yeah, buddy." "I'm glad you're my mom." Calla had to pull over. She put the car in park and pressed her hands to her face, fighting the tears that suddenly wanted to come. "I'm glad too," she managed. "So glad." That night, after Noah was in bed, Calla sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and a cup of tea and did something she'd been putting off for years. She logged into her bank account and pulled up the list of automatic payments. There were more than she remembered. Vera's phone bill, $85 a month. Vera's internet, $60 a month. Vera's water bill, set up for autopay after her mother claimed she forgot, and the service was shut off. A streaming service subscription Calla didn't even use, but paid for because Darla needed it for the kids. The car insurance for Darla's husband, added when he was between jobs just temporarily 2 years ago. Calla added it up. Nearly $400 a month. Almost $5,000 a year. She stared at the numbers. When had this started? After her father died, she remembered that much. Heart attack at 59, sudden and brutal. Calla had been 23, just starting to build a life. Vera had been lost, drowning in bills and grief and the reality of managing a household alone. "Just help me with the phone bill," Vera had said. "Just until I get on my feet." That was 12 years ago. Calla had never gotten on her feet. Or more accurately, she'd gotten on her feet, but decided it was easier to keep Calla paying than to take over herself. And Calla had let it happen. Guilt disguised as responsibility. Duty disguised as love. Well, not anymore. She clicked into the phone bill account, canceled the autopay, entered Vera's information so future bills would go directly to her. Then the internet. Same process. The water bill, the streaming service, the car insurance. One by one, she removed herself from the accounts. No warning, no explanation, just done. When she finished, she closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of her kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic from the highway. She felt light, lighter than she had in years. In the morning, she would change her phone number. In the morning, she would block their emails. In the morning, she would close the door on people who had proven, over and over, that their love was conditional. But tonight, she poured herself a glass of wine, cheap red from a box in the fridge, and sat on her small balcony under the stars and felt the weight of obligation fall away like chains she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten they were there. Inside, Noah slept peacefully, unaware that his mother had just gone to war for him. Calla had never thought of herself as vengeful. She paid her taxes on time. She returned shopping carts to the corral. She held doors for strangers and said please and thank you and tried, generally, to be a decent human being navigating an indecent world. But watching the dominoes fall gave her a satisfaction she hadn't expected. The The first call came 3 weeks after she canceled the autopay. Not to her. She'd changed her number and hadn't given the new one to anyone in her family, but to her work. Somehow, Vera had gotten the main office number and asked to be transferred to Calla Rains in payroll. Calla's coworker, Jennifer, came to her cubicle, looking uncomfortable. "Hey, your mom's online too. She says it's important." Calla didn't look up from her spreadsheet. "Tell her I'm in a meeting." She said she'll wait. "Tell her I'm in an all-day meeting and I'll call her back." Jennifer shifted her weight. "Calla. Please, Jen. Just tell her." Jennifer left. 5 minutes later she was back. "She's really insistent. She says her phone got shut off and she needs you to fix it." Calla finally looked up. "What did you tell her?" "That you were busy, but she's still on hold. She says she's not hanging up until you talk to her." Around them, other cubicles had gone quiet. People were pretending not to listen while obviously listening. Office drama was rare in payroll. This was entertainment. Calla stood and walked to Jennifer's desk. She picked up the phone. "Vera." Finally. Her mother's voice was sharp, agitated. "I've been trying to reach you for weeks. My phone got shut off. Some kind of billing error. I need you to call the company and straighten it out." "No." Silence. Then, "What?" "I'm not going to do that." "Calla, I can't make calls." "I can't." "You're calling me right now." "From Darla's phone." "I can't use her phone for everything. I need you to fix this." Calla kept her voice even, professional. "I'm at work, Vera. I can't talk about this now." "When can you talk about it?" "I can't." Another silence, longer this time. "What does that mean?" "It means you'll need to set up the account yourself. The number for customer service is on the bill. You always handle it." Vera's voice was rising now, drawing out the vowels the way she did when she was working up to real anger. "Not anymore." "Why not?" "Because I'm not responsible for your bills." "I'm your mother." "And I'm done being your bank." She heard her mother's sharp intake of breath, the sound she made before launching into a lecture about respect and duty and all the sacrifices she'd made. Calla hung up. Her hand was shaking. She set the phone back in its cradle and turned to find Jennifer and half a dozen other coworkers staring. "Sorry," Calla said. "That won't happen again. Is everything okay?" Jennifer asked carefully. "It will be." She walked back to her cubicle, sat down, and went back to her spreadsheet. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady on the keyboard. Across the office, someone started typing again. Then someone else. The normal sounds of work resumed. Calla finished her task, filed her report, and checked her email. Nothing from her family. They still had her old address, the one she'd set to automatically delete anything from them. She wondered how long it would take them to realize the internet was going next. The internet lasted another week. Calla only knew because Noah came home from school and mentioned, casually, that his cousin Emma had told him Grandma couldn't watch her shows anymore. Did she say why? Calla asked, though she knew exactly why. Noah shrugged, digging in his backpack for his homework. Something about the internet. Emma said her mom was mad. Of course Darla was mad. Darla had been using that internet connection too, probably still living in Vera's house or there often enough to stream her shows and scroll through social media without eating into her own data plan. Calla helped Noah with his math homework, fractions which he found frustrating, and made dinner. Spaghetti with Jared sauce and a salad from a bag. Nothing fancy, but it was warm and filling, and they ate together at their small table without interruption. "Can I play video games after homework?" Noah asked, twirling pasta around his fork. "Half an hour," Calla said. "Then reading before bed." "Deal." He finished eating and took his plate to the sink without being asked, rinsed it, put it in the dishwasher. Good kid. Such a good kid. Calla cleaned up the kitchen and was loading the last pan when someone knocked on her apartment door. She froze. It was 7:30 on a Tuesday night. She wasn't expecting anyone. She didn't have friends who dropped by. Between work and Noah, there wasn't much time for friends, and the building manager only knocked if something was wrong. The knock came again, harder this time. Calla dried her hands and walked to the door, checking the peephole. Vera. Her mother stood in the hallway, arms crossed, jaw set. She'd driven an hour to get here, and she looked furious. Calla's stomach dropped. She glanced toward Noah's room. The door was closed, the sound of video game, music leaking out. He was occupied. Good. She opened the door but didn't move aside to let Vera in. "We need to talk," Vera said. "I'm busy. I drove all the way here." "I didn't ask you to." Vera's eyes narrowed. "Are you really going to do this on your doorstep?" Calla glanced down the hallway. 2 neighbors were home. She could see light under their doors. The last thing she needed was a scene. 5 minutes, she said. "Out here." She stepped into the hallway and pulled the door almost closed behind her, leaving just enough gap that she could hear if Noah called for her. Vera didn't waste time. "My phone's been shut off for 3 weeks. The internet stopped working this morning. I called the water company, and they said my bill's overdue." "What the hell is going on?" "I canceled the autopay." "Why would you do that?" "Because they're your bills, not mine." Vera's mouth opened and closed. "I can't afford." "Figure it out. Figure it out." Vera's voice rose. "You make twice what I do, and you're going to leave me without." "You have income," Calla interrupted. "You have Social Security. You have the insurance payout from Dad. You can afford your own bills. That money is for emergencies." "Then this is an emergency. Pay your bills." Vera stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "What's gotten into you?" "You told my son he wasn't family." "Oh, for God's sake, we're back to that." Vera threw her hands up. "I told you that wasn't." "You looked at a 9-year-old child and told him he didn't belong at your table. You refused to feed him. And now you're standing here acting like I'm the one being unreasonable. He could have eaten after the real family was done." Calla's voice was quiet but sharp. After he'd sat there and watched everyone else be served while he got nothing, you wanted him to know his place, and I'm making sure you know yours. Vera's face went red. "How dare you?" "No. How dare you?" Calla stepped closer, and despite being 3 inches shorter and 50 pounds lighter, she felt bigger than her mother for the first time in her life. "You want to talk about family? Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't treat children like they're disposable. And family sure as hell doesn't expect to keep getting financial support after pulling something like that. I raised you." Vera spat. "I fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. And that's what parents do. It doesn't make me owe you forever. It doesn't give you the right to mistreat my child. So you're punishing me." "No," Calla said. "I'm just done enabling you." Vera's expression hardened. "You think you're so much better than us, don't you? You and your perfect little life and your perfect little—" "Don't." The word came out like a whip crack. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." They stared at each other. Finally, Vera spoke, her voice cold. "So you're choosing him over us?" Calla didn't hesitate. "Yes." The word hung between them. Vera stepped back like she'd been slapped. "You're going to regret this." "I doubt it." "We're your family." "No," Calla said quietly. "Noah is my family. You're just people I used to know." She went back inside and closed the door, turning the deadbolt with a decisive click. Through the door, she heard her mother's footsteps, heavy, angry, retreating down the hallway. The stairwell door slammed. Calla leaned against the door and closed her eyes. Her hands were shaking again. Adrenaline, anger, and something else. Something that felt almost like grief. She'd just cut off her mother. Actually, truly cut her off. There was no coming back from that conversation. No smoothing it over. No pretending it hadn't happened. In his room, Noah's video game, music, continued playing. Calla pushed off the door and walked to the kitchen. She poured herself water with hands that wouldn't quite hold the glass steady. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. A text from an unknown number. "This is Darla. Mom just called me crying." "What the hell did you say to her?" Calla typed back. "How did you get this number?" "Mom has her ways." "Answer the question." "I told her to pay her own bills." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "You're really cutting her off? After everything she's done for us?" Calla laughed, short, sharp, bitter. "Everything she's done for us? Like what exactly? Are you serious right now?" "She raised us alone after Dad died. She had his life insurance payout and Social Security survivor benefits. And I've been paying her bills for 12 years. How is that raising us? You have more money than we do. I work full-time. I budget. I don't live beyond my means. So now you're judging me too?" Calla stared at the phone. She could feel the old patterns trying to reassert themselves. The guilt, the obligation, the sense that she was being cruel, being selfish, being a bad daughter and sister. But then she thought about Noah's face when he realized there was no plate for him, the way his hands had curled into his sleeves. The question he'd asked the next morning, "Did I do something wrong?" She typed, "I'm done being used. If that makes me the bad guy, I'm okay with that. You've changed. You think you're better than us now." "No. I had just stopped letting you use me." There was a long pause. Then, "Fine. Don't expect us to be there when you need help." Calla smiled without humor. "I won't." She blocked the number. Then she walked to Noah's room and knocked gently. "Yeah." She opened the door. He was sitting cross-legged on his bed, controller in hand, facing the small TV they'd mounted on his dresser. "Almost time for reading," she said. 5 more minutes." "Deal." She closed the door and leaned against the hallway wall. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She looked at the screen. "This is your Aunt Bonnie. I'm very disappointed in you." Calla deleted the message without reading past the preview, blocked the number, and turned off her phone entirely. Silence. Beautiful, complete silence. In his room, Noah laughed at something in his game. A bright, unguarded sound that made her chest ache. That's what mattered. That sound. That laughter. Everything else could burn. 3 months passed like dominoes falling in slow motion. Calla didn't hear from her family, not directly. She'd changed her number twice more, blocked so many emails that her spam filter learned to recognize her mother's writing style, and refused to answer any calls from Indiana area codes she didn't recognize. But information found its way to her anyway. Small-town gossip had a way of traveling. A former classmate who was Facebook friends with Darla, a distant cousin who'd married into the family and still kept in touch, the checkout clerk at the grocery store who'd grown up 3 streets over from Vera. The stories came in fragments. Vera's water had been shut off for 2 days in February before Darla finally paid the bill. Darla had moved back into their mother's house after her husband Kyle decided he was tired of being the only one working and kicked her out. The twins were struggling in school. No internet at home meant no way to complete online assignments. Vera had applied for assistance but kept missing appointments because she couldn't get email notifications without internet and forgot to check the mail. The house was falling apart. The porch step finally gave way entirely. The roof leaked in the upstairs bathroom. The furnace was making noises that meant it probably wouldn't last another winter. Calla listened to these updates with the detached interest of someone watching a TV show about strangers. "That's tough," she'd say. Or, "Hope they figure it out." Or sometimes just, And then she'd go home to Noah. They'd settled into a routine that felt almost peaceful. School, work, dinner together, homework help, reading before bed. Weekends meant the library and the park when weather permitted. Sometimes a movie. Once a month, if money allowed, Dinner at the Italian place Noah liked because they gave him extra breadsticks. It wasn't extravagant, but it was theirs. And Noah was thriving. His grades improved. He smiled more. He'd joined the after-school art club and came home with drawings he was proud of, dragons and spaceships, and a self-portrait where he'd given himself a cape. Why the cape? Calla asked. Because I'm brave now, he said simply. She'd pinned that drawing to the fridge with a magnet and cried later that night after he'd gone to bed. Brave. Her son felt brave. The spring thaw brought new information, this time from Aunt Bonnie, who apparently didn't care that Calla had blocked her and simply created a new email address. bonnyrains2@gmail.com. Subject, you should know. Your mother is not doing well. She's lost weight. She's not sleeping. Darla is there, but she's no help. Just another mouth to feed. The house is in terrible shape. Your mother's too proud to ask, but she needs help. I know you two had a disagreement, but surely you can put that aside for family. Bonnie. Calla read it twice, then forwarded it to her trash folder and blocked the email address. A disagreement. That's what they were calling it now. Not Vera told a child he wasn't family. Not Vera refused to acknowledge her grandson as human. A disagreement, like they'd argued over politics or what movie to watch. Calla closed her laptop and looked at the calendar on her wall. Tomorrow was Noah's 10th birthday. She'd been planning for weeks. A small party, just a few kids from school, nothing elaborate, at the bowling alley that did birthday packages. Cake, pizza, 2 hours of bowling, and party favors she'd assembled herself. Purple bags with candy and small toys, because Noah had decided purple was his favorite color this year. He'd invited 8 kids. 7 had confirmed they were coming. 7 children who would show up and celebrate her son, who would bowl badly and eat too much pizza and sing happy birthday off-key. 7 plates. Calla felt something sharp in her chest, not pain exactly, something fiercer. Her family hadn't acknowledged Noah's birthday in 3 years. No cards, no calls, nothing. And yet they expected her to care that Vera was sad. The next day, Calla left work early to pick up the cake. She'd ordered it from the bakery on 5th, chocolate with purple frosting and Happy Birthday Noah written in white icing. The baker had added small fondant dinosaurs around the edges because she remembered Calla mentioning Noah liked dinosaurs. He's a lucky kid, the baker said, boxing it carefully. I'm the lucky one, Calla replied. The party was perfect. Chaotic, loud, and perfect. Noah bowled a spare in the 3rd frame and threw his hands up like he'd won an Olympic medal. His friend Tyler accidentally threw a ball into the wrong lane. Someone spilled fruit punch on the carpet. The cake was demolished within minutes, leaving only crumbs and smears of frosting. Noah laughed so hard at one point that he got the hiccups. Calla took pictures on her phone. Noah surrounded by friends, Noah blowing out candles, Noah opening presents, books mostly, and a model rocket kit he'd been eyeing for months. At the end of the party, as parents came to pick up their kids, one of the mothers approached Calla. This was really sweet, she said. Noah talks about you all the time. He clearly adores you. Calla felt her throat tighten. He's a good kid. The best, the woman agreed. You're doing something right. After everyone left, Calla and Noah sat in the nearly empty bowling alley. Just the 2 of them, surrounded by deflated balloons and wrapping paper. Best birthday ever. Calla asked. Noah nodded, grinning. Can we come back next year? Absolutely. They drove home in comfortable silence. Noah fell asleep in the back seat, party hat still crooked on his head. Calla carried him inside. He was getting too big for this, but not quite too big yet, and tucked him into bed, still wearing his party clothes. She was pulling his door closed when she heard her phone buzz. A text from the unknown number that was definitely Darla using someone else's phone. Hope you're happy. Mom's in the hospital. Calla's stomach dropped. She walked to the living room and sat on the couch, staring at the message. Another text came through. Dehydration and malnutrition. Because she can't afford food. Because you cut her off. Kala's hands tightened on the phone. She typed. She has income. She can afford food. Not after bills. Then she needs to budget better. Or get assistance. Or ask someone else. You're heartless. Kala stared at that word. Heartless. She thought about Noah's face when he realized there was no plate for him. She thought about the question he'd asked. Did I do something wrong? She thought about 3 years of birthdays that had passed without acknowledgement from the people who claimed to be family. She typed, I'm not heartless. I just stopped being your safety net. She's your mother. And Noah is my son. Tell her to call social services. They can help. She blocked the number. The phone immediately rang. Unknown caller. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again. She turned off the phone and sat in her dark living room, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Noah breathing in the next room. Her mother was in the hospital. She should feel something. Guilt, maybe. Worry. The pull of obligation. She didn't. Or rather, she felt it, but it was distant, like something happening to someone else. Vera had made her choices. Kala had made hers. The consequences were simply playing out. In the morning, Kala turned on her phone and found 17 missed calls and 9 voicemails. She deleted them without listening. At work, Jennifer approached her cubicle hesitantly. Hey, I don't want to overstep, but is everything okay? You seem tense. Kala looked up from her spreadsheet. Family stuff. Nothing I can't handle. Jennifer nodded sympathetically. I get it. My family's a nightmare too. If you need to talk. Thanks. I appreciate it. For what it's worth, you seem like you've got your shit together more than most people I know. Kala managed a smile. I'm working on it. That evening, when she picked up Noah from after-school care, she found him sitting apart from the other kids, drawing quietly. Hey, buddy. Good day. He looked up. Emma was here today. Kala's chest tightened. Emma, Darla's daughter, one of the twins. Oh. She said her grandma is sick. She said it's because you're mean. Kala crouched down to Noah's level. What did you say? I said my mom isn't mean. His eyes were worried. She's not, right? Come on, Kala said gently. Let's talk in the car. They drove to the park instead of going straight home. Kala parked in the nearly empty lot and turned to face Noah. Emma's grandma, my mom, is in the hospital, she said carefully. She's there because she wasn't taking care of herself properly. Emma said it's because you won't help her. I used to pay a lot of her bills, but after what happened at dinner, when there was no plate for you, I stopped. Noah was quiet for a moment. Is she going to die? No, she's going to be fine. She just needs to learn to take better care of herself. Do you feel bad? Kala considered the question honestly. A little, but not enough to change my mind. Why not? Because what she did to you is wrong, and I won't reward bad behavior by pretending everything's fine. Noah picked at his seatbelt. Emma called me names. Kala's blood went cold. What names? She said, I'm not really part of the family. She said, I'm the reason her grandma is sick. Look at me, Kala said firmly. He did. None of that is true. You are my son. You are part of our family, our real family, just you and me. And you are not responsible for any adult's choices. Do you understand? But what if she's right? What if? She's not. She's repeating things she heard from people who don't know the whole story. You didn't do anything wrong. Noah's eyes were red. I don't want to go to after-school care anymore if Emma's going to be there. Kala's heart broke. Okay, we'll figure something else out. Can I stay with you at work? I'll see what I can do. She hugged him. This brave, sensitive boy who'd done nothing to deserve any of this, and promised herself that she would find a solution. That night, after Noah was asleep, Kala did something she rarely allowed herself. She cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears that she wiped away as they fell, sitting alone in her kitchen with a glass of water she didn't drink. She cried for her son, who'd been hurt by people who should have protected him. She cried for herself, for the family she'd thought she had and the reality she'd learned to accept. And she cried just a little for her mother, not because she felt guilty, but because Vera had chosen pride over love, and that was its own kind of tragedy. When the tears stopped, Calla washed her face, checked on Noah one more time, and went to bed. Tomorrow she would call the after-school program and explain the situation. Tomorrow she would make sure no one knew. He was loved and safe and blameless. Tomorrow she would keep moving forward. But tonight, she let herself feel the weight of what she'd done and the price it had cost. And she still didn't regret it. The school event happened in April. Spring concert and art show held in the gymnasium with donated cookies and weak punch. Noah had a painting in the show, a self-portrait in watercolor that he'd been working on for weeks. Calla stood in front of it, studying the careful brushstrokes, the way he'd painted himself, smiling with that dinosaur cape he'd drawn months ago. "It's wonderful," someone said beside her. Calla turned to find Aunt Marlis, her father's sister, a woman she hadn't spoken to in years. Marlis was older than Vera, silver-haired and soft-spoken, wearing a cardigan despite the warm spring evening. "Aunt Marlis, I didn't know you were in town." "I came to see my granddaughter perform," Marlis said, gesturing toward the stage where the fourth-grade choir was assembling. "But I saw you and—" She hesitated. "Can we talk for a minute?" Calla glanced toward Noah, who was across the room showing his friend Tyler something on his phone. "Okay." They walked to a quieter corner of the gym. Marlis didn't waste time. "I heard what happened, with Vera and the dinner." Calla stiffened. "Did you come to lecture me too?" "No." Marlis's voice was firm. "I came to apologize." That stopped Calla cold. "What?" "I should have said something years ago," Marlis said, her eyes sad. "Your mother treated you differently after you adopted Noah. We all saw it. The comments she made. The way she excluded him from family events. How she'd talk about him like he was temporary. Like he didn't count." Calla's throat tightened. "You saw that." "We all did. Your father's side of the family. Even Bonnie, though she won't admit it now. But we didn't say anything because—" Marlis looked away. "Because it was easier not to. Because family dynamics are complicated. Because we told ourselves it wasn't our business." "But it was Noah's business," Calla said quietly. "Yes, it was. And I'm sorry we didn't stand up for him. For you." Marlis reached out and squeezed Calla's hand. "What you did, walking out, cutting them off, that took courage. Real courage. And you shouldn't have had to do it alone." Calla blinked back tears. "Thank you. I know I can't undo the past, but I want you to know that you did the right thing. And if you ever need anything, anything at all, I'm here." They hugged, and Calla let herself lean into it for just a moment. When they pulled apart, Marlis wiped her eyes and smiled. "That boy of yours, he's special. You can see it in that painting." "He is," Calla agreed. "He really is." The choir started singing. Calla and Marlis stood together and watched, and for the first time in months, Calla felt like maybe she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. After the concert, Noah found her. "Can we get ice cream?" "Sure, buddy." "Can Aunt Marlis come?" Calla looked at her aunt, who nodded with a smile. "I'd love to." They went to the ice cream place on Main Street, the one that made waffle cones fresh and had about 40 flavors. Noah got chocolate chip, cookie dough. Marlis got vanilla with caramel. Calla got mint chocolate chip. They sat outside at a metal table that wobbled on the uneven sidewalk, and Noah told them about his painting process while ice cream dripped down his cone. It felt normal, easy, like family was supposed to feel. When they parted ways, Marlis hugged them both. "I mean it," she told Calla. "Call me if you need anything." "I will." On the drive home, Noah was quiet. "You okay?" Calla asked. "Aunt Marlis is nice." She is. Why don't we see her more? Because I got so used to dealing with your grandma and Aunt Darla that I forgot about the rest of the family. Noah thought about that. Are there other family members who are nice? Maybe. We might have to find out. I'd like that, Noah said. Calla reached over and squeezed his hand. Me too, buddy. Me too. That night, Calla received a letter. Not an email or text, but an actual handwritten letter, delivered through the mail. The return address was Vera's. Calla stared at it for a long time before opening it. The handwriting was shaky, Vera's arthritis getting worse, or maybe just the strain of writing something this long. The letter was 3 pages. Dear Calla, I've had a lot of time to think since the hospital. The doctors say I need to take better care of myself. Eat more. Drink more water. Manage stress. Darla and the girls are here, but it's hard. The house is falling apart. Money is tight. I know I made mistakes, but family forgives. That's what family does. I'm not asking you to come back and fix everything. I'm just asking you to think about it. Think about what your father would want. Think about the example you're setting for Noah. You can't stay angry forever. Love, Mom. Calla read it twice. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd actually done wrong. Just vague references to mistakes and manipulation disguised as olive branches. Think about what your father would want. Think about the example you're setting for Noah. You can't stay angry forever. Calla walked to her kitchen, pulled out a lighter from the junk drawer, and held the letter over the sink. She lit the bottom corner and watched it burn. The paper curled and blackened, Vera's handwriting disappearing into ash. Calla ran water over the remains and washed them down the drain. Then she walked to Noah's bedroom and stood in the doorway, watching him sleep. The example she was setting for Noah was that you don't accept mistreatment to keep the peace. That you don't let people hurt you just because they share your blood. That love without respect isn't really love at all. She'd made her choice, and she'd make it again, every single time. A year later, Calla's life had found its rhythm. She woke at 6:30 every morning to make breakfast, usually oatmeal or eggs, sometimes pancakes on weekends. Noah had grown 3 inches and needed new clothes constantly. They budgeted for it. They made it work. The apartment was still small, still modest, but it was theirs. She'd hung Noah's artwork on the walls, the dinosaur cape self-portrait, a watercolor landscape from spring, a sketch of their apartment building that was surprisingly good. His school photo from 5th grade sat framed on the bookshelf, right next to a candid shot Aunt Marlis had taken of them at her granddaughter's birthday party. They'd become part of Marlis's orbit. Sunday dinners every few weeks. Holidays. Small gatherings where people actually seemed happy to see them. Noah had friends now. Real friends, not just kids he knew from school. Tyler's family had them over for game nights. Emma's classmate, not Darla's Emma, a different one, invited Noah to sleepaway camp that summer. He'd stopped asking permission to speak. Stopped waiting to see if he'd done something wrong. Stopped curling into himself when adults were angry nearby. He laughed easily, argued when he disagreed, had opinions and expressed them. He was brave. Calla's phone didn't ring with emergency calls anymore. No late-night texts demanding money. No voicemails full of guilt and obligation. The silence was extraordinary. She'd heard, through the small-town grapevine, that Vera had finally applied for assistance programs. That Darla had gotten a part-time job at the Dollar General. That the house was still falling apart, but they were managing. They blamed Calla for everything, of course. Told anyone who would listen that she was cold, ungrateful, selfish. That she'd abandoned her family over nothing. That she thought she was too good for them now. The stories were elaborate. Creative, even. One version had Calla stealing money from Vera. Another claimed she'd forbidden them from seeing Noah. A particularly dramatic one suggested Calla had threatened legal action if they came near her. None of it was true, but truth mattered less than narrative in a small town. Calla didn't defend herself. didn't correct the record, didn't engage. She simply lived her life, picked up Noah from school, helped with homework, made dinner, read before bed, worked hard at her job and got a small raise in March, saved money, planned a real vacation, their first ever, to a cabin in the mountains that coming summer. On Noah's 11th birthday, they had another party at the bowling alley. 12 kids showed up this time. The cake was chocolate again, with blue frosting this year because Noah had decided blue was better than purple. He bowled 2 spares and a turkey, 3 strikes in a row, and his friends cheered like he'd done something miraculous. Calla took pictures. So many pictures. At the end of the party, after everyone had left and they were packing up the last of the decorations, Noah looked at her seriously. Mom. Yeah, buddy. Are you happy? The question surprised her. Of course I am. Why? You just seem different than you used to. Lighter, maybe. I don't know how to explain it. Calla set down the bag of leftover party favors and sat beside him on the bench. I am lighter, she said. I stopped carrying things that weren't mine to carry. Like what? Like other people's problems, other people's anger, other people's expectations. She pulled him close. I stopped trying to fix things that weren't my responsibility to fix. Does that make you selfish? No, she said firmly. It makes me smart. There's a difference between helping people and letting them use you. Noah leaned into her side. Did Grandma use you? Yes. Does that make you sad? Sometimes. But mostly I'm just relieved it's over. They sat together in the almost empty bowling alley, surrounded by deflating balloons and the smell of pizza grease. I'm glad I have you, Noah said quietly. Calla kissed the top of his head. Best thing that ever happened to me, remember? I remember. 3 months later, Calla ran into Darla at the grocery store. It was inevitable, really. Hollis Creek was small, and Calla still did her shopping at the same store she'd always used. Usually, she went during the week to avoid weekend crowds, but Noah had needed supplies for a school project, and they'd run out on a Saturday afternoon. She was in the baking aisle, reaching for flour, when she heard a cart approach. She knew before she turned around. Darla stood there, looking older and more tired than she had a year ago. The blonde dye had grown out, leaving a harsh line between brass and mouse brown. She wore sweatpants and a zip-up hoodie, no makeup. The twins weren't with her. They stared at each other for a long moment. Calla, Darla said finally. Darla. Noah was at the end of the aisle, examining cake, decorating supplies with the focused intensity of someone trying to pretend they didn't notice the tension. How've you been? Darla asked. The question was automatic, social programming kicking in even when they both knew the answer didn't matter. Good, Calla said simply. You. Darla's laugh was bitter. Terrible, actually, but I'm sure you've heard. I haven't. Really? The way this town gossips. Calla shrugged. I don't listen. Darla's jaw tightened. Of course you don't. Too busy with your perfect life. Not perfect. Just mine. Must be nice. Darla's voice had an edge now, the familiar bitterness that used to make Calla feel guilty. Having money to spare, not worrying about bills, not having to ask for help. Calla felt the old pull, the urge to apologize, to soften, to offer something to ease the tension. She didn't. I work for my money, she said calmly. I budget. I make choices. You could do the same. That's easy for you to say. No, it's not. It's hard. But I do it anyway because I have to. Calla picked up the flower. I'm not going to apologize for building a stable life for my son. Your son, Darla repeated, and something ugly crossed her face. You mean the kid who ruined our family? Noah had frozen at the end of the aisle. Calla felt ice settle in her veins. She set the flower in her cart very deliberately and turned to face her sister fully. Noah didn't ruin anything, she said, her voice quiet and deadly. Vera did that when she told a child he wasn't family. And you did it when you defended her. We didn't. You absolutely did. You called me oversensitive. You said I was making a big deal out of nothing. You sided with her over a 9-year-old child. Calla stepped closer. So don't you dare blame my son for what your choices cost you. Darla's eyes were wet now, angry tears that she wiped away furiously. You think you're so much better than us. No, I just know my worth, and I know Noah's worth, and neither of us is measured by whether or not you approve. She turned to leave. Mom's sick again, Darla said to her back. Calla stopped, but didn't turn around. The doctors say it's stress. She's lost more weight. She cries all the time. Darla's voice cracked. She asks about you, about Noah. She wants to fix things. Then she knows how to reach me. She's tried. You blocked her. Because she never apologized. She never acknowledged what she did wrong. She just wanted me to pretend it didn't happen and go back to paying her bills. She's sorry. Then she can say that to me herself, in a real apology that doesn't make excuses or blame me for reacting. Calla looked over her shoulder, but I'm not holding my breath. She walked to Noah and put her hand on his shoulder. Come on, buddy. Let's finish shopping. They walked away. Darla didn't follow. In the checkout line, Noah was very quiet. You okay? Calla asked. She said, I ruined the family. That's not true. But what if? No, listen to me. Calla crouched down so they were eye level, not caring that people were staring. You didn't ruin anything. They did, by treating you like you didn't matter, by choosing pride over love, by expecting me to accept their cruelty to keep the peace. She held his face gently. None of this, not one single bit, is your fault. Noah's eyes searched hers. Promise. I promise. He hugged her there in the grocery store, and she held him tight and ignored the looks from strangers who didn't know the whole story and wouldn't understand even if they did. The final piece fell into place in December. Calla had just finished her Christmas shopping. Modest presents for Noah, books mostly, and the model airplane kit he'd been eyeing when her phone rang. Unknown number. Indiana area code. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello. Calla? It's Marlis. Relief. Hi, Aunt Marlis. Everything okay? Marlis hesitated. I have some news. About Vera. Calla's stomach tightened. Is she? She's fine. Physically. But she signed the house over to Darla. Said she can't manage it anymore. She's moving into that senior apartment complex on 4th Street. Calla processed this. Okay. The thing is, she told the family she's washing her hands of the whole situation. Said you and Darla can figure out your own problems because she's done being in the middle. She was never in the middle, Calla said quietly. She was the problem. I know, but I thought you should hear it from someone who cares about you. Marlis paused. She's also telling people she did nothing wrong, that you're just sensitive and holding a grudge. Of course she is. I'm sorry. Don't be. I stopped expecting better from her a long time ago. They talked for a few more minutes about holiday plans. Marlis was hosting Christmas dinner and wanted Calla and Noah to come. Before hanging up, Calla sat with the news for a while. Her mother had moved on, rewritten the narrative, made herself the victim, and Calla didn't care. That was the strangest part. She'd expected to feel something, vindication, maybe, or anger at the continued denial. But she just felt nothing. Vera was Vera. She would never change, never admit fault, never apologize genuinely. And that was fine. Calla had built a life that didn't require her mother's approval or acknowledgement. She had Noah. She had Aunt Marlis and the extended family who'd welcome them. She had stability and peace and the quiet satisfaction of knowing she'd done the right thing. The rest was just noise. Christmas morning arrived cold and bright. Snow had fallen overnight, covering the parking lot in white. Noah woke at 6 and tiptoed into Callah's room, trying to be quiet and failing entirely. "It's Christmas," he whisper-shouted. Callah laughed and let him drag her to the living room where she'd set up their small tree. Nothing fancy, but strung with lights and topped with a star Noah had made in art class. They opened presents slowly, savoring each one. Noah loved the model airplane kit and immediately wanted to start building it. Callah loved the mug he'd painted for her at one of those pottery places, decorated with blue dinosaurs and the words "Bestemo" in wobbly letters. They made hot chocolate and sat on the couch in their pajamas, watching the snow fall and the early morning light turn everything golden. "This is perfect," Noah said. Yeah. He leaned against her. "Can we do this every year? Just us?" "Well, we're going to Aunt Marlis's for dinner tonight. But tomorrow? Just us all day." "Deal." They sat together in their small living room, surrounded by wrapping paper and ribbon, and Callah felt something settle deep in her chest. This was family, not the people who demanded she sacrifice herself to keep them comfortable, not the ones who gave love conditionally and withdrew it as punishment. This, right here, this boy and this moment and this hard-won peace. Her phone buzzed once, a text from a number she didn't recognize. She glanced at it. "Merry Christmas. We miss you, Mom." Callah deleted it without responding. Then she set her phone aside and pulled Noah closer, breathing in the smell of hot chocolate and new plastic toys and pine needles. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, they were warm and safe and exactly where they belonged. The truth was simple. Callah hadn't punished Vera and Darla. She hadn't plotted revenge or schemed to make them suffer. She'd just stopped saving them, stopped paying bills that weren't hers, stopped accepting treatment that hurt her son, stopped carrying the weight of relationships that only ran one direction. And without her money, her silence, and her patience to cushion them from consequences, they'd finally learned what being cut off actually felt like. Not because Callah was cruel, but because she'd chosen to be kind to the person who mattered most. Years later, Noah would ask her about that time. They'd be driving somewhere. He'd be 17, preparing for college, confident and capable in ways that still surprised her. And he'd say, "Do you ever think about them? Grandma and Aunt Darla." "Sometimes," Callah would answer honestly. "Do you regret it? Cutting them off?" She'd think about that question. Really think about it. She'd think about the boy he'd been, small and careful, always trying not to be a problem, and the young man he'd become, brave and sure of himself, knowing without question that he was wanted and loved. "No," she'd say, "not even a little bit." And she'd mean it, because the family that had said her son wasn't real family had taught her the most important lesson of all. That family wasn't blood. It was choice, and she'd chosen Noah every single time.